Have you ever dreamed of taking an amazing family trip but felt completely stuck? Maybe it's the endless choices, the logistics, or just the fear of the unknown, or of it not being a perfect trip that's holding you back. You're not alone. In this episode, we're breaking down the barriers to saying yes to adventure and showing you how to take that first step toward unforgettable family memories. Ready to stop dreaming and start packing? Let's do this. If you want to start traveling more with your family, this podcast is for you. Welcome to Wanderwise, a family travel podcast. I'm Megan Whitley Medlin, a mama of 4 with a serious case of wanderlust. Traveling with kids presents many challenges, but with the right tools in your toolbox, you can create unforgettable memories. Whether you enjoy exploring U.S. national parks or international destinations, this podcast is your ultimate resource to inspire your travels and help you craft well-thought-out itineraries for your family's next big adventure. Get ready to plan smarter and wander wisely. Your next adventure starts now. Hello, Wanderers! I am so excited to be here with you on episode number 1 of Wanderwise. I wanted to start this podcast off with something that even plagues me, and I've been traveling with my family for a long time, and that is pulling the trigger on the next family vacation. This can be a little overwhelming when you're the one in charge because you're going to be spending money and deciding your family's vacation, and you may or may not have gotten anyone else's input on what they would want to do. And let's just be honest, if you're dealing with teenagers, they are going to turn down every suggestion you throw at them, more than likely. At least that's my take. So I really take on all the planning on my own. I may throw out a few ideas to see if there are any takers or interest, but when it comes to deciding on where we're going to go and what we're going to do, I really just do what I want to do and keeping that in mind with the people that are going with me. But it's really hard to commit to that plan knowing that it's all going to fall back on you. So I get that. You're not alone. I'm right here with you. Sometimes that hardest step is truly saying yes to adventure and getting that trip on the books. So let's make that first step a little less intimidating. I have some great insights for you and some personal experience that may help you get that trip on your calendar sooner than later. Before we get into some of the tips that I would like to share with you today, I do have a personal story I'd like to start off with that had me really second guessing if the adventure that I had planned for my family was a little overzealous. I have a family of 6 people, 4 kids, and their ages are, let's see, how old is the oldest? Oldest is 14, and then a 12-year-old boy, and then I have 2 younger boys that are 8 and 7. So last year, I got this wild hair and got pretty obsessed with Portugal. And I just knew that we had to go. I knew that this was going to be the most exciting, greatest introduction to European countries. We're on the East Coast of the U.S., so it's way closer than going to Hawaii or, we're able to take a 6-hour flight to get to Lisbon. So I just knew in my head, like, this was going to be just the best opportunity and a family-friendly destination. And I'm not going to highlight Portugal too much. I could talk about that all day, but we'll have to save that one for another episode. But I say this story to kind of go into the holdup, because there was a holdup. I really wasn't sure how everyone would do on a red-eye flight and the time change. So when I booked this trip and then presented it to my husband. His first question was, wait, so we're going to be flying overnight. The kids aren't going to sleep, and we're going to wake up and it's going to be morning, and we're going to have a full day packed in with cranky, tired, and hungry kids. And then I sat back and I thought, oh my gosh, what have I done? Like, the flights are booked, the trip is booked. Have I made a colossal mistake? And I'll preface this. Well, I guess I'm not prefacing because I've already said it, but my kids are great flyers. They've taken dozens of flights. Even the youngest one has flown, I don't know, I think he's been to like 21 or 2 states and multiple countries. So he is a pro. So I thought, they're going to be tired. This is not going to be a big deal at all. But I did have a little bit of second guessing when I had that conversation with my husband. So I'm not immune to the hesitations of planning a family trip. I think it gets all of us. With it being an international trip too, I felt a lot of pressure to get this one right. Here we are dragging these 4 kids along. They would have been happy to go down the road to an amusement park and just had the best time, but I am all about new experiences, new cultures, and the fact that these are places that I want to see. And I don't know if you have tried to ask grandparents / aunts and uncles to watch 4 kids. Nobody wants to watch 4 kids, people. So all of these kids are going with us. So we're going to go to destinations that I'm interested in with that in mind, that they're going to enjoy it too. But they don't get a choice because I pay the bills. Okay, so it comes time to take this trip. We're going over spring break. We have a flight from Charlotte to Boston. We had delays in Charlotte for, I think there was maybe some bad weather in Boston from the plane that was coming in. So already, and I always build in a decent 2 to 3 hour minimum buffer for connection times. And so I had that. I think it was like 2.5 hours of a buffer for our connection in Boston. And as our plane was delayed and delayed again and delayed 3 times, I got extremely nervous that we were going to miss our connection, which would have meant that we would have had to take the next day's flight out to Lisbon. So I was stressing. Okay, so we get on our flight and they tell us, you are going to be really cutting it close. They're not going to hold the gate for you. We land in Boston. The weather is terrible. They let us off the plane first. Mind you, we are now at like 10 p.m. So the kids are in rare form, but they're doing okay. They're holding up, but like, we're not fresh chickens here. We are running out of steam. So some adrenaline pumps in. We grab our carry-ons and pretty much run to we had to run to a gate that would take our shuttle bus. We had to catch a shuttle bus, which we waited 15 or 20 precious minutes that we did not have. And the morale with other travelers was extremely low, as it should be. But you're at 10:30 at night, and the people around you are getting so flustered, and my kids are looking at me, and I had one in tears, and he was like, is this okay? And I had to, reassure him, this is actually not okay. In my brain, I'm panicking, I'm freaking out, but you have to put on a brave face for them so that they're not falling apart, because there's only one thing worse than a tired kid, and that's a tired kid that's falling apart. We just could not have that. So we held it together. We said, everything's going to be fine. Worst case scenario, we'll stay overnight in Boston and we'll catch the flight out tomorrow. It is okay. The shuttle bus finally arrives. We pile on, and then we sit on the shuttle bus for like 10 minutes before this bus is moving. And then we just start driving, and we're driving on the tarmac, like past the gates, all the different concourses, and thinking, this is just not looking good. They park the bus. It takes forever to get everyone out. No one is in a hurry that's driving the bus or that's working at the airport. everyone is in a hurry and panic that's on the bus, and we are packed to the gills. So we grab our kids and we start running up the stairs as quick as we could, and then we have to literally run. I was pouring sweat. It was so disgusting. We ran and got our gate, and when we sat down on that plane, like as soon as we walked through the doors of that plane, they shut the doors, and that was it. Boarding was done. We ran past people who missed their flights to Dublin, like they were pounding on the gate. Let us in. We're here. You can see the plane. They missed it. They had a toddler. I felt really, really bad for them and was thankful that that was not our scenario, at least this time. So already this trip had started off very rocky. And I don't say that to scare you. I just say it only compounded my hesitance to travel to Europe with 4 kids. So we got on a flight. We made it to Lisbon. Long story short, we had a fabulous time. But I was really nervous to book that trip, knowing it was going to be trickier than our typical domestic, more relaxed kind of vacation. It was definitely not the most convenient or relaxed boarding process and all of the struggles we had in the airport, but we still talk about that delay and running through the airport and how crazy ridiculous it was for all of us. So even in the lowest parts, you are going to be making memories. Your kids will remember it. And I would step out on a ledge here to say that it's when the things don't go as expected and don't go as planned, those type of memories seem to sink down a little bit deeper, and you're always able to look back on them with fondness and kind of building that bond as a family. So as we talk about the challenges that typical families face for booking a trip and saying yes to that adventure, it really comes down to 3 common fears or barriers. And I'll go through each of these and we'll discuss some ways to manage that and with the right tools and the right mindset, get that trip on the books. So number 1, not knowing where to go. This is a big one because, like me, I'm sure you have so many places that you're wanting to go. How in the world do you choose? Second, worrying about logistics. Once we get there, how are we going to go from here to here? Are we going to ride the metro? Do they have a bus? Should we rent a car? Can I drive on the left side of the road? Do I need an international driving license? All of that. That is a lot to take on. 3, keeping everyone entertained. If you are traveling with your family, you have different ages, you have different interests, and it is up to you to make sure everyone is entertained and enjoying their time. Otherwise, why are you going, right? So how do we decide, or how do you decide as a family where to go? Do you have international destinations that you want to start ticking off, or do you want to try your hand domestically? Is this your first big trip as a family? If that's the case, let's start small. Choose a destination that's close to home. There's less risk involved, and if all else fails, you can pack up and go back home. Do I think you can manage something further away from home? Absolutely. But if you are worried and this is your first trip with your family, I would not try to make anything more difficult by adding in flights to faraway places. Start small. This is okay. I did this exact same thing with my family. I had 4 kids. The youngest was 2 years old, or not even 2 years old, and we took a road trip and we drove 4 hours to Shenandoah National Park. Did everything go great? No, it did not. In fact, I have a great story about this, and I might as well share it now because this is just my life. As a 2-year-old, as we were unpacking our bags in our cabin in Shenandoah, he goes and finds my husband's bottle of melatonin and downs I don't know how many, and he had a nappy nap. for the rest of the day. He woke up about 5 p.m., ready to go. We called poison control. They were not concerned. They just said to watch him. If you have kids, this should be no surprise. Kids get into absolutely everything. But if that had happened and we had been in an international destination, I would have lost my mind. I was so glad that we were 4 hours from home. This was much more manageable chaos because of our proximity and the ease that this trip, as far as how far away we were from home. We weren't in a different time zone. We were near care facilities if we needed something in an emergency. That can make things a lot simpler when you can have solutions to problems that might come up when you're traveling. So if you're just starting out traveling with your family, I would highly suggest choosing a location that is relatively close to home, in the 3 to 5 hour range, so that you aren't as overwhelmed with the what ifs. What if somebody gets sick before we leave? What if somebody gets sick while we're on vacation? I would recommend staying in the same country just so that you can get some confidence taking your whole family to a destination. So you've decided on where you're going to take your family. Of course, the next question that comes up is, how are you going to pay for it? How do you budget for this family trip? I will have different episodes in the future for how you can budget for a trip, whether that's a bucket list once in a lifetime trip, such as a safari or, Northern Lights trip. But for now, just to keep it simple in this first episode, setting a realistic budget and breaking that up into manageable steps of how you're going to pay for that. So a lot of times you're going to have to put down a deposit on your room where you're going to be staying, and you'll know upfront how much that's going to cost. If you have airfare to consider, that's going to be due at the time of booking that airfare. Lots of information coming on that too in a future episode. But another tip just for the first time family travel is keep it as simple as possible by eliminating airfare and taking that road trip instead. This is just a great introduction and learning how your family travels together, your dynamics, getting them, the kids, used to traveling distances in the car and finding out what their interests are when you go to a destination. If you eliminate the cost of airfare, it really gives you more flexibility to spend on different activities. And the whole point of this podcast is to keep it simple and to say yes to your next adventure. And if it's your first adventure, keeping it as simple as possible, hopping in the car, flexibility is going to be much, much easier. I will typically once I've decided on a destination, I will find out where we're going to stay and get that deposited. And then if we are flying, I will look at flights. And then from there, I can give a little bit of space into knowing what kind of activities we're going to be doing, depending on how far in advance that I'm planning that trip. I can put off paying for activities for a couple of months, and that helps spread out the money that's due at different times to help budget a little bit better for that trip. And think about it too, like when you arrive somewhere, are you going to be needing to eat every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner out? Or are you going to try to grab groceries and take a cooler along with you and make sandwiches or cook at home or in your condo or hotel or what are you going to do for food? And so be sure to think about food as you travel. A lot of times that's a little bit of a hidden expense because we don't think about that once we leave home, how much it costs to feed everyone for the meals away. A well-fed kid is a happy kid in my experience, so always keeping those snacks on hand and knowing what type of food you're going to be eating is a way to make it a little bit simpler. And a well-fed kid is a happy kid in my experience. So always keeping those snacks on hand. And speaking of those cute little kids, involve them in the planning. Once you decide where you're going, if you're making that decision on your own, or if you want to get their input on things that interest them, get them involved in the planning and give them some choices of what activities they might enjoy, or, grab some books from the library. I know I did this a lot with our kids when we were going to South Dakota. I picked up a book from the library that talked about Mount Rushmore and the presidents, and that was really exciting for them once they found out they were going to get to see that in person. So getting the kids involved is going to really build the excitement for the trip and letting them kind of be plugged into that planning too. There are so many resources available now, blog posts and travel guides and travel books and Facebook groups that are geared towards specific destinations and national parks and countries. There's so many resources that you can get your hands on to help make your planning process a little bit easier. Using those resources like ready-made itineraries can really bring down the stress of, okay, we're going to X destination. What are we going to do when we get there? What's the best route to plan? So using those guides, those resources, or consulting with a travel advisor or a friend that has gone to that destination can be really helpful. I love helping families sort out their itineraries for different destinations. I work a lot with families that are going to different national parks just because I have so much on-hand experience in those areas. So I love to give consultations and provide a really well thought out itinerary roadmap plan that would make the whole family happy. It's really important to remember that there's never going to be a perfect time, and excuses are always going to be present if you are looking to travel. I'm sure every one of you could sit and write out 5 different reasons of why you shouldn't go somewhere right now or next summer. And if we let those excuses infiltrate our brain and our thought process, we literally never will go anywhere. I see it so many times. I have people contact me. They want to travel. They want to see the Grand Canyon. That is awesome and a bucket list trip and something that the whole family would enjoy. And then they'll come back to me a year later and they'll say, we still haven't done it. I really wish we could. XYZ happened. Okay, well, what really happened is you didn't put it on your calendar, and so you didn't give it importance, and now it's a year later. So of course things came up because you didn't put it down on your calendar and say, this is when we're going here. Focus on creating the memories. It's not going to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, but looking at your calendar and marking down the date, just like you would with a doctor's appointment or your work schedule, like you know what's going to happen because it's in your calendar. So don't wait for the perfect moment. Just put it on the calendar and go. I know it can be incredibly intimidating, especially when you're the one in charge of planning, to step up and make travel a priority, but the memories that your family will have from these experiences are going to be something that you look back on for a really long time. The kids are going to remember these times, and they're going to be so grateful that you made that a priority for your family. Okay, so let's recap these actionable tips for saying yes to travel in your next family adventure. Number 1, start small. Choose a destination closer to home. This is to build confidence in your family travel experience and to prepare you for further away destinations. Having this closer to home trip under your belt is going to help your whole family feel more confident in stepping out of your comfort zone even more on the next trip. Number 2, once you've got that destination picked, setting a realistic budget and breaking it into manageable steps by first securing your lodging/flights, and then later on deciding on your activities and paying for those closer to time of travel, as well as budgeting for the meals that your family will have while you're in destination. Tip 3, involving the kids in planning and building up that excitement, letting them input their interests and, checking out library books, reading about the destination that you're going to really get them excited, and not just showing up the day before saying, hey, we're going here the next day, and springing it on them that way. Let them get involved, and the whole family will get excited about this trip. Tip 4, use the resources available. Join Facebook groups, work with a travel advisor, find trip guides, pre-made itineraries to take some of the legwork out of your planning process and build a custom trip to what your family would want to do with those resources. And then lastly, just remembering that there's never a perfect time, but it's always a good time to say yes to adventure, and that your family is going to look back on those times and just be so glad that you made that effort in planning a trip for them to take as kids and to have those experiences together. And as I wrap up this first episode of Wanderwise, I just encourage you to write down a list of even your top 10 destinations that you would just absolutely love to see in your lifetime, and mark those down with, do you want to take those trips with kids? And then further narrow it down to, what time of year do we have available to take these trips, and be able to knock some things off the list that way until you come down to a destination that is very doable for your family to take in the near future. And having that step done is going to surge your process, and then you can really dive into the research or contact me to help you with your travel plans. I hope this leaves you excited and ready to plan and ready to take action on your next family adventure. Don't forget to join my private travel Facebook group. I've got it linked in the show notes. We talk about travel every single day. I have lots of tips and highlights from resorts and destinations, both domestic and international. And I would just love to have you a part of that conversation. If you're looking for customized travel planning services, I'm also linking my calendar in the notes so that we can get together and talk about your upcoming trip plans. I can help you decide on dates and destination based on that, what information you can provide, and get your family exploring this year. So excited to work with you. So glad you're here on this episode. I hope you're leaving inspired and ready to plan your family's next adventure. Until next time, wander wisely. Thanks for joining another episode of Wanderwise. I hope you're feeling inspired to plan your family's next unforgettable adventure. Join the community in my private travel Facebook group, linked in the show notes, for more travel tips and ideas. If you'd like a customized plan for your next vacation, fill out the form in the show notes to get started. Until next time, wander wisely.